Welcome, apprentice. Today we're getting into an explainer that's honestly going to fundamentally change how you view your own work, your craft, and honestly the true meaning of self-reliance. Look, as you're building your skills and learning the tools of your trade, it's totally natural to want to prove yourself, right? To show the world that you are capable and tough. But today we're going to deconstruct a pretty dangerous myth that traps way too many talented folks. It's a lesson about the strength of many pillars. And this isn't just a story about timber and nails. It's practically a blueprint for sustainable success and genuine mastery. So pay close attention to the journey we're about to take, because the lessons we're uncovering today, they might just save you from some of the most painful mistakes a builder can make.
So let me hit you with a profound question right out of the gate. Must a master builder carry every single burden alone? To figure this out, let's look at the story of Arav. Arav was this incredibly skilled young carpenter living in a small mountain village, totally cut off from the rest of the world by a wide river. And he was famous in town for one absolute unbreakable rule: he never, ever asked for help. Roof leaking? Fixed it himself. Cart broken? Repaired it alone. He fell into this really dangerous trap of believing that absolute total independence was the only real measure of true strength. The village admired him for it, and honestly, Arav kind of admired himself for it too. Keep that in mind as we keep going.
Now, where did he even get this idea? Well, you might actually recognize this toxic mindset yourself. His dad constantly repeated this one phrase to him: strong people solve their own problems. That single sentence literally became the foundation of his entire worldview. It made him view asking for help not as, a practical necessity, but as an unforgivable weakness in his craft. To Arav, reaching out meant admitting defeat. It meant proving he wasn't good enough. And as an apprentice, you really have to recognize when the voices of the past are building walls around you instead of bridges to your future.
Which brings us to the ultimate test of Arav's whole philosophy. A massive monsoon sweeps through the valley and completely destroys the old wooden bridge. And this wasn't just some minor inconvenience. It was the village's literal lifeline. Without it, farmers are stuck, kids can't get to school, people can't get to the clinic. It's bad. So when the village council meets, Arav proudly and incredibly stubbornly volunteers to take on this massive community reconstruction project completely by himself. The villagers are like, this is way too big, and they offer to help, but Arav just insists that working alone is going to be faster. That decision, it set a ticking clock on his inevitable collapse. Let's see how the next few days played out.
Picture this exhausting, solitary routine. Over those first few days, Arav is out there cutting timber long before dawn and hammering heavy nails well past dusk. And every single evening, his neighbors walk by and offer a hand. Need help lifting those supports? No. Should we bring extra tools? No. Can we at least help measure the planks? No, thank you. He just repeatedly rejected every single offer from his community, stubbornly convinced that accepting even a tiny fraction of help would somehow invalidate his skill.
But what actually happens when you try to operate as an island of one? The physical and mental toll here is absolutely brutal. The human body is an invincible apprentice. As the days dragged on, this intense exhaustion sets in. Avarov's hands are raw and blistered. His back is aching with this deep, punishing pain. And worst of all for a master craftsman, his isolation starts tanking the quality of his work. Suddenly, measurements are off, planks aren't aligning right. He's spending hours fixing costly mistakes that a second pair of eyes would have caught instantly.
Then, bam, the breaking point. One afternoon, Arav is carrying this massive timber beam completely alone, and he slips on the wet riverbank. The heavy wood crashes down and pins his leg firmly to the ground. He cries out, but because he's pushed everyone away all week, nobody is around. He's struggling helplessly for agonizing minutes until an elderly woman, Sita, the village basket weaver, happens to walk by. She asks if he's hurt, and Arav, literally gritting his teeth to cling to his pride, claims he's totally fine. Just let the weight of Sita's piercing response sink in. If you're fine, why can't you stand? Man, that question just cuts right through the illusion of total self-reliance, doesn't it?
Notice how it took sheer physical agony, like literally being trapped under a log, for Arav's pride to finally break against reality. Sita just smiles gently and asks, "Would you like some help?" For a long moment, you can imagine this bitter war in his head between his lifelong pride and his current undeniable reality. And then, very quietly, he utters the hardest word for any solitary worker to say: yes. Just 3 little letters. But for Arav, it was the heaviest thing he'd ever lifted. He finally allowed himself to be vulnerable.
This moment brilliantly illustrates the sheer mechanics of community versus isolation. Look at the stark contrast here. On one side, you have the brutal inefficiency of Arav, struggling helplessly alone, trapped under that beam for agonizing minutes. On the other side, the sheer, instantaneous power of a community. Sita just calls out to some nearby field workers. Within minutes, 6 villagers run over, and together they lift that exact same burden easily, in mere seconds. What a master builder couldn't even budge alone, a community handled with effortless grace. Once he's freed, Arav is, naturally, totally embarrassed. He actually starts apologizing for needing help. But the village elder sits down beside him and drops some profound wisdom. He asks Arav, "Do you ever think less of your neighbors when you help them out?" Arav says, "Well, no." The elder explains that accepting assistance doesn't make you less capable, and it for sure doesn't make you weak. Listen to these words carefully, apprentice. We don't help each other because we're weak. We help each other because we're human. That single realization completely shattered Arav's whole illusion.
The very next morning, Arav did something far braver than carrying a timber beam by himself. He stood up in front of the entire village, looked at the exact same people he'd been turning away all week, and finally admitted his limitations out loud. "I can't build this bridge alone." And you know what? It didn't diminish his status as a master craftsman at all. It elevated him to a true leader. Sita just smiled and replied, "Good."
Now watch how this builds a true foundation. Look at how naturally a massive burden becomes light when you divide it among willing hands. The community basically became his pillars. The farmer stepped up to cut the timber. The blacksmith forged stronger metal supports. A teacher started organizing the flow of volunteers. And even the kids found ways to help by shuttling smaller tools and supplies. Every single person brought their own unique skill to the table. The bridge was no longer just Arav's heavy burden, it was the village's shared triumph. Let's compare the true cost of building under these two realities, because the difference is wild. Arav's original solo plan, that guaranteed months of grueling work, deep exhaustion, and lonely isolation. In stark contrast, this community effort got the bridge finished in less than 2 weeks. But honestly, it wasn't just about speed. The site was suddenly filled with laughter, rest, and connection. Arav was laughing more, he was resting more. He wasn't just building a physical bridge anymore, he was rebuilding his connection to his own people. Apprentice, this right here is the absolute most critical lesson of this entire explainer. We have got to redefine independence. True independence is not the toxic isolation of doing everything by yourself until you literally collapse. It's the strategic, quiet wisdom of knowing exactly when to stand on your own 2 feet and exactly when to lean on your community. A master knows his tools, for sure, but a grandmaster knows his team. Fast forward a few months, and the beautiful, sturdy bridge is officially finished. At the opening ceremony, Arav stands by the railing, looking at all the people who built it with him. And he openly admits to the crowd that he was dead wrong to think strength meant carrying every burden alone. From that day forward, his lasting advice was simple. Whenever anyone in the village felt the need to apologize for asking for help, Arav would just smile and remind them, even the strongest bridges need more than one pillar. And so, my apprentice, I leave you with this final, provocative challenge. Take a hard look at your own workbench. Look at your own life right now. What burdens are you proudly carrying alone that could be instantly lightened if you just asked for a little help today? Realize that reaching out for a helping hand is never, ever a sign of weakness. It is the ultimate sign of a master's wisdom. Take this lesson with you, share the load, and go build something far greater than you ever could alone. Catch you next time.